Jake Matthews stepped off the transport shuttle and into the busy corridors of Nexus Prime. The trading station buzzed with activity as dozens of different alien species moved about their business. The air smelled of exotic spices and engine fuel. Jake had been to many places in his 32 years, but this neutral zone always amazed him. He carried a small case containing gata chips and mineral samples. His company back on Earth needed rare crystals that could only be found in the Outer Rim territories. The Draxians controlled most of the mining rights in this sector. Jake knew they would drive a hard bargain, but he had no choice. The meeting was set for Docking Bay 7. Jake walked through the main corridor, watching the different species around him. Tall blue-skinned Andromedans discussed trade routes near a food vendor. Short, furry creatures he did not recognize argued over shipping schedules. In the distance, he saw a group of what looked like walking trees having a heated debate in cliques. And Whistles. Jake reached the meeting point early. He always liked to scope out the area before important negotiations. The docking bay was large and mostly empty, except for a few cargo containers. 3 Draxian ships sat in the far corner. The Draxians were known for their aggressive business tactics and short tempers. 20 minutes later, 4 Draxians approached him. They were roughly human-sized, but covered in thick gray scales. Their eyes were small and black. The leader wore expensive-looking armor that gleamed under the station lights. Jake stood up from the crate he had been sitting on. The lead Draxian spoke in heavily accented Standard. His name was Grex, and he controlled the mining operations on 3 different worlds. Jake introduced himself and explained what his company needed. The negotiation started well enough. Jake offered a fair price for a modest amount of rare crystals. Grex listened, but his expression grew darker as Jake spoke. The other 3 Draxians moved to flank Jake on both sides. Jake felt uncomfortable, but continued with his presentation. He had dealt with intimidation tactics before. Grex suddenly slammed his clawed hand on the nearest crate. The sound echoed through the empty bay. Jake tried to stay calm as Grex began shouting about humans being weak and worthless. The other Draxians laughed and made threatening gestures. Jake realized this was going very wrong. He tried to defuse the situation by offering a higher price. Grex grabbed Jake by the shirt and lifted him off the ground. The Draxian was stronger than he looked. Jake could smell his sulfur breath as Grex brought their faces close together. Grex told Jake that humans were nothing but pests. He said Jake would pay triple the normal price, or his company would be blacklisted from every mining operation in the sector. The other Draxians agreed loudly. One pulled out a wicked-looking blade and ran his finger along the edge. Jake tried to negotiate, but Grex threw him backward into a maintenance corridor. The space was narrow and dark. Jake stumbled but managed to stay on his feet. The 4 Draxians followed him into the corridor. Jake looked around for another exit, but there was none. Grex pushed Jake against the wall. The cold metal pressed into his back. The Draxian leader explained in graphic detail what would happen if Jake did not agree to their terms. The threats became more personal and violent. Jake realized these were not just business tactics. The Draxians seemed to enjoy frightening him. Jake was about to agree to whatever they wanted when he heard footsteps behind the Draxians. A figure emerged from the shadows at the other end of the corridor. Even in the dim light, Jake could tell this newcomer was tall. Very tall. The figure stepped into a patch of light, and Jake saw her clearly for the first time. She stood nearly 7 feet tall with crystalline blue skin that seemed to glow faintly. Her build was athletic and powerful. She wore simple dark clothing that did not hide her obvious strength. Her hair was white and hung to her shoulders. Most striking were her eyes, which were a brilliant silver color. The Draxians turned to face this newcomer. Grex demanded to know what she wanted. The tall woman spoke in a voice that was calm, but carried an undertone of steel. She said the human was under her protection now. Jake had never seen her before in his life. Grex laughed and told her to mind her own business. The woman took a step forward. Jake noticed she moved with the fluid grace of a trained fighter. She repeated her statement about Jake being under her protection. This time her hand moved to rest on something at her belt. Draxians looked at each other uncertainly. One of them whispered something to Grex. Jake caught the word Cytherian. Grex's sudden expression changed from anger to worry. He released his grip on Jake and stepped back. The tall woman took another step forward. She spoke again, but this time in the Draxian language. Jake did not understand the words, but the tone was unmistakably threatening. The 4 Draxians began backing toward the main corridor. Grex pointed at Jake and said this was not over. Then they quickly left the maintenance area. Jake slumped against the wall as his heart rate slowly returned to normal. The tall woman turned to face him. Up close, her alien features were even more striking. Her skin had an almost metallic quality, and her silver eyes seemed to see right through him. She asked if he was injured. Jake shook his head and thanked her for the help. She studied him for a moment, then extended her hand. Jake shook it and was surprised by her firm but gentle grip. She introduced herself as Zara Vel-Tar from the Cytherian Empire. Jake had heard of the Cytherians. They were known as fierce warriors who valued honor above all else. He wondered why. One of them had helped a complete stranger. Zara seemed to read his thoughts. She said she had been watching his negotiation from the observation deck above the docking bay. She told Jake she was impressed by how he had handled himself. Most species either tried to fight the Draxians or immediately gave in to their demands. Jake had remained calm and tried to find a reasonable solution even when threatened. Zara said this showed strength of character. Jake felt embarrassed by the praise. He explained that fear had kept him from fighting back, not wisdom. Zara smiled for the first time. Her expression transformed her stern features into something almost warm. She said courage was not the absence of fear, but acting despite it. Jake offered to buy her a drink as a thank you. Zara considered this for a moment, then nodded. They walked back into the main corridor together. Jake noticed how other beings moved out of their way when they saw Zara. Some looked at her with respect, while others showed obvious fear. They found a quiet cantina on the upper level of the station. Jake ordered something that resembled coffee, while Zara requested a blue liquid he did not recognize. As they talked, Jake learned that Zara was also something of an outsider. She had left her home world to explore the galaxy and seek her own path. Jake found himself relaxing in her presence, despite her intimidating appearance. Zara listened carefully when he spoke and asked thoughtful questions about human culture and Earth. In return, she told him about Cytherian society and their warrior traditions. Hours passed without either of them noticing. When Jake finally checked, at time he was shocked to see how late it had become. Zara seemed equally surprised. She said she rarely enjoyed conversations with other species this much. Jake felt the same way. As they prepared to leave, Zara told Jake that the Draxians would likely try to cause trouble for him in the future. She offered to help him find other suppliers for the crystals his company needed. Jake accepted gratefully. He had the feeling this meeting would change his life in ways he could not yet imagine. 3 months had passed since Jake first met Zara on Nexus Prime. What started as a chance encounter had grown into something neither of them expected. They had become business partners first, and then something much deeper. Jake found himself looking forward to each new adventure they shared. Their trading ship moved through hyperspace toward the mining colony of Haven Rest. Jake sat in the pilot's seat checking their course, while Zara reviewed security reports from their destination. She had insisted on gathering intelligence about every place they visited. Her warrior training made her naturally cautious. Jake watched Zara work, and marveled at how much his life had changed. Before meeting her, he had been a lonely trader scraping by on small deals. Now he had a partner who brought both protection and connections to species he never could have reached alone. More importantly, he had found someone who understood his desire to explore and build bridges between different worlds. Zara looked up from her datapad and caught him staring. She raised one eyebrow in a questioning expression. Jake smiled and turned back to the navigation console. Even after months together, he still felt amazed that this powerful warrior had chosen to stay with him. Their relationship had not been without challenges. Many humans viewed Zara with suspicion and fear when they first met her. Her height and obvious physical capabilities made some people nervous. Jake had learned to ignore the stares and whispered comments when they walked into human establishments together, that the reactions from other Catherians had been even more difficult. Zara had explained that her people viewed humans as a weak and primitive species. Her association with Jake was seen as beneath her warrior status. She had received several messages from her family demanding that she return home and end this. Embarrassment. Jake knew these criticisms hurt Zara more than she let on. The Catherian culture valued honor and reputation above almost everything else. By choosing to partner with a human, she was risking her standing in their society. Jake sometimes wondered if he was being selfish by accepting her companionship. Ship dropped out of hyperspace near Haven Rest. The mining colony orbited a small rocky planet rich in rare metals. Jake had arranged to trade some medical supplies for a shipment of processed titanium. It was a simple deal, but it would provide enough profit to keep them operating for another month. Haven Rest was a typical frontier colony. The main settlement consisted of prefabricated buildings connected by covered walkways. The population was mostly human, with a few alien workers mixed in. Jake docked their ship at the small spaceport and began unloading their cargo. A woman approached them as they worked. She was tall for a human with short brown hair and the bearing of a former military officer. She introduced herself as Captain Lisa Park and explained that she ran security for the colony. Jake noticed she kept her hand near her sidearm while talking to them. Captain Park asked about their business on Haven Rest. Jake showed her their trading permits and explained the cargo exchange they had planned. Lisa studied the documents carefully, then looked at Zara with obvious curiosity. She had clearly never seen a Catherian up close before. Zara remained silent during the inspection, but Jake could sense her watching Lisa carefully. His partner had excellent instincts about people and could usually tell who might cause problems. After a few minutes, Lisa seemed satisfied with their paperwork and welcomed them to the colony. The cargo exchange went smoothly. The colony administrator was happy to trade their excess medical supplies for rare metals. Jake and Zara completed the transaction and loaded their new cargo within a few hours. They planned to leave the next morning after their ship finished refueling. That evening they joined some of the colonists at the local cantina. Jake enjoyed these social gatherings because they gave him a chance to hear news from different parts of the galaxy. Zara usually stayed quiet during these conversations, but Jake knew she was listening to everything. Captain Park approached their table during the evening. She had changed out of her uniform into casual clothes and seemed more relaxed. She asked if she could join them for a drink. Jake welcomed her while Zara nodded politely. Lisa asked Jake about his background and how he had ended up trading in the Outer Rim territories. Jake told her about his small company back on Earth and his desire to explore new markets. Lisa seemed impressed by his willingness to take risks in dangerous sectors of space. Then Lisa turned to Zara and asked about Catherian culture. Jake tensed slightly because he knew some humans asked insensitive questions about alien societies. But Lisa showed genuine curiosity and respect as she inquired about Zara homeland and traditions. Zara began talking about her people warrior heritage and their complex honor codes. She explained that Catherians valued strength and courage above material wealth. Lisa listened carefully and asked thoughtful follow-up questions. Jake found himself learning new things about Zara's background as she opened up to Lisa. As the evening continued, Lisa shared her own story. She had served in the Earth Defense Force for 15 years before retiring to work in colony security. She had seen combat against several hostile alien species and understood the importance of building peaceful relationships with friendly ones. Lisa told them she was impressed by their partnership. She said it was rare to see such obvious trust and cooperation between different species. Most interspecies relationships she had observed were based on mutual need rather than genuine friendship. Jake felt proud hearing this assessment of his bond with Zara. Near the end of the evening, Lisa's tone became more serious. She warned them that the Terran Colonial Authority had been asking questions about Jake's activities. They were particularly interested in his alien associate and the nature of their business relationship. Lisa suggested they be careful when dealing with official human authorities in the future. Jake felt a chill at this news. The Terran Colonial Authority was known for their suspicious attitude toward humans who worked closely with alien species. They viewed such relationships as potential security risks that needed to be monitored or controlled. Zara asked Lisa why she was warning them about this. Lisa explained that she believed cooperation between species was essential for humanity's survival in the galaxy. She thought Jake and Zara represented the kind of partnership that could benefit everyone involved. The next morning, Jake and Zara prepared to leave Haven Rest. Captain Park came to see them off at the spaceport. She shook hands with both of them and wished them safe travels. As they were about to board their ship, Lisa pulled Jake aside. She told him quietly that she had received a message from her former commanding officer in the Earth Defense Force. The message warned her that Jake was being investigated as a possible security risk. Lisa advised him to avoid Earth space until the situation cooled down. Jake thanked Lisa for the warning and promised to stay in touch. As their ship lifted off from Haven Rest, he shared Lisa information with Zara. His partner listened thoughtfully, then placed her hand on his shoulder. Zara told Jake that her own people were also becoming suspicious of their partnership. She had received another message from her sister, who commanded a Catherian battlecruiser. The message warned that the High Council was considering declaring Jake an enemy of their empire. Jake felt overwhelmed by the mounting pressure from both their species. He wondered if their relationship was worth the trouble it was causing. Zara seemed to sense his doubts. She took his hands in hers and looked directly into his eyes. She told Jake that she had never felt as complete as she did when they were together. Her warrior training had taught her to value duty and honor above personal desires. But Jake had shown her that true strength came from choosing your own path, even when others disapproved. Jake felt his doubts melting away as he looked into Zara's silver eyes. He realized that he would rather face the entire galaxy with her beside him than return to his old lonely existence. He told Zara that he wanted to make their partnership official in whatever way their two cultures would recognize. Zara smiled and explained that Catherians had a bonding ceremony for warriors who chose to share their lives with another. It was a simple ritual that created a spiritual connection between the participants. Jake said he would be honored to participate in such a ceremony. They spent the next few days researching both human and Catherian marriage traditions. Finally, they decided on a simple ceremony that would honor both their backgrounds. Captain Park agreed to witness the event when they returned to Haven Rest the following week. The ceremony took place in a small garden outside the colony main building. Jake wore his best formal clothes, while Zara dressed in traditional Catherian ceremonial robes. Captain Park and a few colonist friends served as witnesses to their union. Jake and Heike. Zara exchanged vows that promised mutual support and protection for as long as they both lived. Zara taught Jake some basic Catherian phrases, while he shared human traditions about marriage and partnership. The ceremony was simple, but deeply meaningful to both of them. That night, as they lay together in their ship, Jake reflected on how much his life had changed. He had found not just a business partner, but someone who completed him in ways he had never imagined possible. Whatever challenges their future held, he knew they would face them together. Jake stared out the viewport of their ship as Earth grew larger in the distance. He had not been home in over 2 years and felt nervous about returning. The news of his marriage to Zara had somehow reached the human media networks. Their relationship had become a subject of debate across the colonies. Zara sat beside him studying reports about current political tensions on Earth. The Terran colonial authority had been pushing for stricter controls on human-alien relationships. Director Ryan Cole had made several public statements about the security risks posed by mixed-species partnerships. Jake received a message from his lawyer about his father's estate. The old man had died 6 months earlier, leaving Jake a small house and some business assets. Jake needed to return to Earth to settle the legal matters. He had asked Zara to stay behind, but she refused to let him face potential threats alone. Their ship approached Earth Orbital Control Station. Jake transmitted their identification codes and requested permission to dock. There was a long pause before the control officer responded. The man's voice sounded suspicious as he asked about the nature of their visit and the identity of Jake. Alien companion Jake explained that he was returning to settle family business and that his wife would be staying with him. The control officer seemed surprised to hear the word wife. After another delay, they were given permission to dock at the main civilian terminal instead of the usual commercial port dot. As they walked through the terminal, Jake noticed the stares from other humans. Some people looked curious while others seemed frightened or angry. A few pointed at Zara and whispered to their companions. Jake tried to ignore the attention, but he could see that Zara was becoming tense. Security officers approached them at the customs checkpoint. The lead officer was a middle-aged woman with Agent Karen White written on her name tag. She examined their documents with unusual care and asked detailed questions about their recent travels and business activities. Agent White seemed particularly interested in Zara's background and her reasons for coming to Earth. Zara answered the questions calmly, but Jake could see the warning signs in her posture. His wife was a trained warrior who did not appreciate being treated like a potential threat. Finally, Agent White stamped their documents and allowed them to pass. She warned them that all aliens visiting Earth were required to report their location to authorities every 48 hours. Zara nodded curtly, but said nothing. Jake thanked the agent and quickly led Zara away from the checkpoint. They took a transport to New Detroit, where Jake's father had lived. The city had grown considerably since Jake's last visit, but the downtown area still looked mostly the same. They checked into a hotel near the legal district where Jake would be meeting with lawyers and government officials. The hotel clerk seemed nervous when he saw Zara, but processed their registration without comment. Their room was on the 15th floor with a view of the city skyline. Jake watched the traffic moving below while Zara examined the security systems and emergency exits. Jake spent the next morning meeting with his father lawyer. The man was polite, but kept glancing toward the door where Zara waited in the lobby. He explained that settling the estate would take several days due to new regulations about foreign assets and alien beneficiaries. The lawyer mentioned that Jake's marriage had created some complications. Since Zara was not a human citizen, there were questions about her legal rights to inherit any portion of the estate. Jake would need to appear before a special committee to resolve these issues. That afternoon, Jake and Zara attended a public hearing. about interspecies marriage regulations. Jake had been required to testify about his experiences as part of a government study on human-alien relationships. The hearing room was packed with reporters and curious observers. Director Cole sat at the head of the committee panel. He was a stern-looking man in his 50s with cold gray eyes. As Jake took his seat at the witness table, Cole stared at him with obvious disapproval. Agent White sat nearby, taking notes on everything that was said. The questions started innocently. Enough. Committee members asked about how Jake had met Zara and why he had chosen to marry her. Jake explained their business partnership and the personal bond that had developed between them over time. Director Cole leaned forward and asked if Jake understood the security implications of his marriage. He suggested that Jake's wife might be using their relationship to gather intelligence about human weaknesses. Cole implied that Jake's loyalty to his own species was now questionable. Jake felt his anger rising at the accusations. He pointed out that Zara had proven herself trustworthy many times and had even helped human colonies negotiate peaceful agreements with other alien species. Their partnership had been beneficial to human interests, not harmful. Agent White stood up and presented a file containing surveillance reports about Jake activities. She claimed that his travels through alien territory had taken him to sensitive military areas. She suggested that he might be passing information to hostile forces without realizing it. Zara had remained silent during most of the hearing, but now she spoke for the first time. Her voice was calm, but carried an undertone of steel that Jake recognized as dangerous. She told the committee that she found their accusations insulting and baseless. Director Cole made the mistake of telling Zara that her opinion was not relevant to the proceedings. He said that alien testimony was not considered reliable in matters of human security. Zara's eyes began to glow with a faint silver light that Jake had learned to recognize as a warning sign. The hearing ended with Director Cole announcing that Jake would be required to remain on Earth pending further investigation. He said that Jake's wife would be subject to enhanced monitoring during their stay. The committee would reconvene in a week to make final determinations about the case. Jake and Zara left the hearing room, followed by a crowd of reporters shouting questions. They pushed through the mob and escaped to their hotel. Once in their room, Zara began pacing like a caged predator. Jake could see that she was struggling to control her temper. That evening they had dinner at a quiet restaurant away from the government district. Jake tried to reassure Zara that the committee accusations were just political theater. Most humans were not as suspicious as Director Cole and his supporters. Zara told Jake that she was concerned about the level of hostility they were facing. She explained that Catherian warriors were trained to recognize threats and respond accordingly. Her instincts were telling her that Director Cole was planning something more than just enhanced monitoring. Jake received a message on his communication device during dinner. The text was from an unknown sender, but the content made his blood run cold. Someone had discovered their hotel room number and current location. The message contained detailed threats about what would happen if they did not leave. Earth immediately. Zara read the message over Jake's shoulder and her expression hardened. She told Jake that they needed to take these threats seriously. Someone with access to government surveillance systems was tracking their movements. This was not just random harassment from anti-alien protesters. They returned to their hotel room to find it had been searched. Nothing was missing, but their belongings had been moved and examined. Zara found several listening devices hidden in the furniture and electronics. Someone was definitely monitoring their private conversations. Jake felt trapped and frustrated by the situation. He had come to Earth to settle his father's affairs, but instead found himself caught up in political games and security investigations. He wondered if they should just leave and abandon the estate settlement. Zara sat on the bed and took Jake's hands in hers. She told him that running away would only confirm the suspicions about their loyalty. They needed to stay and fight the accusations through proper legal channels. But she also warned him that her patience with human authorities was wearing thin. Jake spent a sleepless night worrying about their situation. He had never imagined that his marriage would create such controversy. All he had wanted was to build a life with someone he loved. Now they were being treated like criminals and potential traitors. The next morning brought more bad news. Jake Lawyer called to inform him that his assets had been frozen pending the committee investigation. He would not be able to access his father bank accounts or sell any property until the security concerns were resolved. Agent White arrived at their hotel that afternoon with a team of security officers. She announced that Jake was being taken into protective custody for his own safety. She claimed that there had been credible threats against his life from anti-alien extremist groups. Jake protested that he did not need protection and had not requested any. Agent White ignored his objections and ordered him to come with her team. She told Zara that she would be allowed to visit Jake once his location was secure. Zara stepped between Agent White and Jake. Her silver eyes were now glowing noticeably, and her voice carried the authority of a Catherian battle commander. She told the agent that Jake was under her protection and would not be taken anywhere without his consent. Agent White made the mistake of ordering her officers to restrain Zara while they removed Jake from the room. Jake realized with growing horror that the humans had no idea what they were about to unleash. His wife was not just any Catherian warrior, but a trained killer who had bonded with him. Jake found himself in a windowless room, deep inside a government facility on the outskirts of New Detroit. Agent White had called it protective custody, but the locked door and armed guards made it clear he was a prisoner. 3 days had passed since they took him from the hotel, and he had not been allowed to contact Zara. Director Cole sat across from Jake at a metal table. The man had been asking the same questions for hours, trying to get Jake to admit that his marriage was part of some alien conspiracy. Jake refused to betray Zara or provide information that could be used against her. Cole told Jake that his wife had disappeared from their hotel the night he was taken. Security cameras had recorded her leaving the building, but then lost track of her movements. Cole suggested that this proved Zara was a trained spy who knew how to avoid surveillance systems. Jake almost laughed at the suggestion. Of course, Zara could avoid human surveillance systems. She was a Catherian warrior trained in infiltration and combat tactics. But she was not a spy. She was probably planning to rescue him from this ridiculous situation. Agent White entered the room, carrying a datapad with new intelligence reports. She informed Cole that several government facilities had experienced security breaches over the past 2 days. Nothing had been stolen, but the intrusions showed sophisticated knowledge of human defense systems. Cole turned to Jake with an accusatory expression. He claimed that Zara was obviously gathering intelligence for a future attack on Earth. He demanded that Jake contact her and arrange a meeting so she could be captured. Jake refused and told Cole he was making a serious mistake. Jake tried to explain the Catherian bonding process to Cole, but the director dismissed it as alien nonsense. Cole believed that all alien behavior could be understood in terms of military strategy and political advantage. He could not comprehend that Zara actions were driven by emotional bonds rather than calculated planning. Meanwhile, Zara moved through the facility ventilation system like a deadly shadow. She had spent 2 days studying the building layout and security procedures. Her Catherian training allowed her to remain undetected while she searched for Jake's location. She had tried the diplomatic approach first by requesting a meeting with Director Cole. The man had refused to see her and ordered security to arrest her if she appeared at any government building. That was when Zara decided that human authorities only understood direct action. Zara had also contacted the Catherian embassy, but received no help from her own people. The official response was that she had chosen to bond with a human and must deal with the consequences alone. Her sister Nira had sent a private message warning her that the High Council viewed her marriage as a disgrace to their warrior traditions. The facility holding Jake was designed to contain human prisoners, not Catherian warriors. Zara easily bypassed the electronic locks and motion sensors that detected normal human movement patterns. Her enhanced reflexes and strength made her nearly invisible to security systems. Calibrated for weaker species, she reached the detention level just as alarms began sounding throughout the building. Someone had finally noticed the security breaches she had created as distractions. Guards were running toward false alerts on the upper floors while she made her way to Jake's cell. Jake heard the alarms and hoped they meant Zara was coming for him. He had been worried about her safety, but knew better than to underestimate his wife's abilities. The Catherians were apex predators who had conquered half their galaxy through superior combat skills. Cole and Agent White rushed out of the interrogation room when the alarm started. They left Jake alone with two guards, who seemed nervous about the security alert. Jake could hear shouting and running footsteps in the corridors outside. Zara found Jake's cell and saw the two guards standing outside the door. She approached them silently from behind, using techniques learned in decades of military training. The guards never saw her coming. She rendered them unconscious without killing them, which showed remarkable restraint for a Catherian warrior. Cell door lock was more sophisticated than the others she had encountered. Zara studied the mechanism for several seconds, then applied precise pressure to specific points on the control panel. The door opened with a soft click that was barely audible above the alarm noise. Jake looked up to see Zara standing in the doorway like an avenging angel. Her crystalline blue skin seemed to glow in the harsh fluorescent light. Her silver eyes held a dangerous intensity that Jake had never seen before. She was magnificent and terrifying at the same time. Zara crossed the room in two quick strides and pulled Jake into her arms. She examined him carefully, checking for injuries or signs of mistreatment. Jake assured her that he was unharmed, but Zara's expression remained deadly serious. She told Jake that Director Cole had made a grave error by taking him against his will. In Catherian culture, such an act was considered an attack on the bonded pair and required a violent response. Zara had already decided that Cole would face the consequences of his actions. Jake tried to convince Zara that they should just escape and leave Earth immediately. He did not want her to do something that could not be undone. Zara listened to his concerns, but explained that her warrior honor demanded satisfaction for the insult Cole had committed. They moved through the facility corridors toward the main security center. Zara wanted to broadcast a message to the entire human government explaining why she was taking action. She believed that other species needed to understand the consequences of threatening bonded Catherian pairs. Security forces were converging on their location, but Zara moved through them like they were standing still. Her combat training and enhanced physical abilities made human soldiers seem slow and clumsy by comparison. She disabled opponents without killing them, but left no doubt about her superior capabilities. Director Cole watched the security monitors in growing horror as Zara systematically defeated his best-trained guards. Agent White stood beside him, updating tactical teams about the alien intruder movement through the building. Neither of them had expected a single opponent to penetrate their most secure facility. Cole finally understood that he was dealing with something far beyond human capabilities. The Catherians were not just another alien species to be managed and controlled. They were apex predators who could destroy human civilization if they chose to do so. Zara reached the main security center and found Cole and Agent White waiting with a dozen heavily armed guards. She looked at the assembled humans with something approaching pity. They still did not understand what they were facing, or why their actions had provoked this response. She activated the facility communication system and began broadcasting to government leaders across Earth. Her voice was calm and controlled as she explained the situation. She told them that Director Cole had committed an act of war by imprising her bonded mate without justification. Zara detailed the Cytherian bonding laws and explained why Cole actions could not be ignored. She warned that other bonded pairs would face similar treatment unless Earth changed its policies toward interspecies relationships. Her words carried the authority of a warrior culture that had never been defeated in battle. Director Cole ordered his guards to open fire, but their weapons had no effect on Zara's enhanced physiology. She moved through the gunfire like it was rain and systematically disabled each guard with precise strikes. Agent White tried to escape, but found her path blocked by Jake, who had appeared in the doorway. Jake told Cole that this confrontation could have been avoided if he had listened to reason. The director had chosen to see enemies where none existed and had created a crisis through his own paranoia and prejudice. Now he would face the consequences of his poor judgment. Zara stood over Cole's fallen form and continued her broadcast. She announced that Jake was free and under her protection once again. She warned that any future threats against bonded pairs would be met with similar responses. The galaxy needed to understand that Cytherian warriors would not tolerate attacks on their chosen mates. The broadcast ended, and Zara helped Jake to his feet. They walked out of the facility together while human forces watched in stunned silence. No one tried to stop them as they made their way to their ship at the spaceport. As they prepared for departure, Jake realized that their lives had changed forever. Zara's violent response to his imprisonment had sent shockwaves through both human and alien governments. Their relationship was no longer just a personal matter, but had become a symbol of interspecies cooperation and conflict. Director Cole lay unconscious in the ruins of his security center while medics treated his injuries. His career was over, and his policies had been exposed as dangerous failures. Agent White stared at the monitors showing Jake and Zara's ship leaving Earth orbit and wondered what other consequences would follow from this confrontation. The galaxy had learned an important lesson about threatening those under Cytherian protection. Jake and Zara were free, but they could never return to their old quiet life of trading between the stars. They had become symbols of something larger than themselves, whether they wanted it or not. 6 months after the confrontation on Earth, Jake stood on the observation deck of their new home on Haven Edge. The frontier world offered them something they had never found elsewhere: complete acceptance of their partnership. The colonists here judged people by their actions, not their species or political connections. Zara joined him at the viewing window, carrying 2 cups of coffee. She had developed a taste for the human beverage during their travels together. Outside their window, the alien sunset painted the sky in shades of purple and gold that Earth skies never produced. Their consulting firm had grown beyond anything Jake had imagined possible. Human colonies throughout the Outer Rim were requesting their help in establishing peaceful relationships with alien neighbors. Jake's diplomatic skills, combined with Zara's understanding of warrior cultures, made them uniquely qualified for this work. The incident on Earth had changed interstellar politics in ways neither of them expected. Director Cole had been removed from his position and faced criminal charges for exceeding his authority. Agent White had been demoted and transferred to a desk job processing immigration paperwork. More importantly, the Terran Colonial Authority had been forced to revise their policies toward interspecies relationships. Public opinion had turned against Cole's aggressive tactics after seeing footage of Zara's rescue mission. Many humans began to view Jake and Zara as heroes rather than security threats. The Cytherian Empire had also been forced to reconsider their position when Earth demanded an explanation for Zara's actions. The High Council had to publicly defend the bonding laws they had privately criticized. Jake found himself officially recognized as a member of an alien warrior clan. Captain Lisa Park had left her security job on Haven Rest to join their consulting firm. She brought valuable military experience and helped train human colonists in defensive strategies that did not rely on aggression. Lisa had become fascinated by Catherian concepts of strength through protection rather than domination. Jake walked through their office complex, reviewing the latest contract proposals. 3. Different colonies had requested help with first contact situations involving newly discovered species. A mining consortium wanted advice on negotiating with territorial aliens who controlled valuable asteroid fields. The work was challenging and sometimes dangerous, but Jake had never felt more fulfilled. He was helping to build bridges between species that might otherwise view each other as threats. Each successful negotiation made the galaxy a slightly more peaceful place. Zara emerged from their training facility, where she had been teaching combat techniques to human security officers. The students were learning that true strength came from protecting others rather than intimidating them. It was a difficult concept for humans raised on competitive individualism to understand. She found Jake in their communications center reviewing messages from potential clients. One transmission caught her attention because it came from her sister Nira, who commanded a Catherian battlecruiser in the core systems. The message requested a private meeting to discuss family matters. Jake encouraged Zara to meet with her sister. Despite their previous conflicts, he understood that family relationships were important even when they were complicated. Nira had been critical of their marriage, but she was still Zara's closest relative. The meeting took place on a neutral space station in the border region between human and Catherian space. Jake accompanied Zara but remained in the background while the sisters talked privately. He could see the family resemblance in their proud bearing and silver eyes. Nira had come to formally welcome Jake into their warrior clan. The ceremony was simple, but deeply meaningful in Catherian culture. Jake learned basic combat techniques, not to make him a warrior, but to help him understand the traditions he was now part of. The sisters also discussed the political changes that had resulted from Jake's imprisonment and rescue. The High Council had received protests from dozens of alien species about human treatment of interspecies couples. The Catherians found themselves in the unexpected position of defending peaceful cooperation. Nira told Zara that their actions had inspired other Catherian warriors to question the Empire's aggressive expansion policies. A growing faction believed that strength should be used to protect the weak rather than conquer new territories. Zara had become a symbol of this movement, whether she intended it or not. Jake watched the sisters embrace before Nira returned to her ship. The meeting had healed old wounds and strengthened family bonds that had been strained by political disagreements. Zara seemed more at peace with her choices after receiving her sister's acceptance. Their return to Haven Edge brought news of their biggest contract yet. The Galactic Trade Council wanted them to establish first contact protocols for a newly discovered species called the Velans. These aliens had advanced technology, but were extremely cautious about contact with other species. The assignment would take them to the edge of explored space where few humans had ever traveled. Jake felt excited by the challenge, while Zara began planning security measures for such a dangerous mission. They would be representing not just their own interests, but the hopes of dozens of species for peaceful expansion. Captain Park joined them for the mission briefing along with Dr. Helen Torres, a xenobiologist who specialized in first contact procedures. The team would spend months in deep space trying to establish communication with beings whose psychology and motivations were completely unknown. Jake reviewed everything they knew about the Velans, which was very little. Long-range sensors had detected cities and spacecraft, but no one had successfully communicated with them. Several exploration missions had been turned away by automated defense systems that seemed designed to prevent contact. Zara studied tactical reports about Velen technology and defensive capabilities. Their weapons were more advanced than anything the Catherian Empire possessed, but they seemed to be used only for protection rather than conquest. This suggested a peaceful but cautious species that might be open to careful diplomacy. The night before their departure, Jake and Zara walked through the gardens behind their office complex. The alien plants glowed softly in the moonlight, creating an otherworldly beauty that never failed to amaze Jake. He reflected on how much his life had changed since that first meeting on Nexus Prime. Zara took his hand as they walked and told him she was proud of what they had built together. Their partnership had grown from a chance encounter into something that was changing galactic politics. They had proven that love and mutual respect could overcome fear and prejudice. Thought about the young man who had been cornered by Draxian bullies 2 years earlier. That frightened traitor could never have imagined the adventures and challenges that lay ahead. Meeting Zara had not just saved his life, but had given him a purpose worth fighting for. Their ship, Harmony Edge, waited at the spaceport, fully supplied for the long journey to Velen space. The crew included specialists from 6 species, all working together toward a common goal. Jake smiled at the irony that their mission to contact one new species would be carried out by representatives of so many others. As they prepared for departure, Jake received a message from his old lawyer. On Earth, Director Cole had been sentenced to 5 years in prison for violating civil rights and exceeding his authority. More importantly, the Terran government had officially apologized for their treatment of interspecies couples. Agent White had also sent a brief message expressing regret for her role in Jake's imprisonment. She admitted that fear and prejudice had clouded her judgment and thanked him for not pressing charges against her. Jake appreciated the apology and hoped she had learned from the experience. The launch sequence began, and Jake took his position at the navigation console. Zara settled into the co-pilot seat and began final systems checks. Captain Park and Dr. Torres strapped themselves in as the ship's powerful engines came online. Haven Edge fell away below them as they climbed toward the jump point. Jake watched the planet shrink to a small dot among the stars and felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness about their mission. They were heading into the unknown to contact beings that no one had ever spoken with. Zara reached over and squeezed his hand as they prepared for the hyperspace jump. She told him that whatever challenges awaited them in Velen space, they would face them together. Their bond had grown stronger through every trial and would continue to sustain them in the adventures ahead. The stars shifted to brilliant lines as they entered hyperspace. Jake looked at Zara and marveled again at the warrior, woman who had chosen to share her life with him. She had responded to threats against him with violence when necessary, but her true strength lay in her capacity for love and protection. Their story had become legend among the colonies, but Jake knew the real adventure was just beginning. Each new species they contacted and each peaceful relationship they helped establish would make the galaxy a better place for everyone. They had found their calling in building bridges between worlds and peoples who might otherwise remain strangers or enemies. The ship raced through hyperspace toward their appointment with the unknown. Jake Matthews, the lonely trader, and Zara Veltar, the exiled warrior, had become something greater than either.